Thank you, Michelle. This is Terry Shallow with Running Industry Association. I will not be your presenter today. That will be Whitney Gibson. I will turn the mic over to him in a moment. I just wanted to first say good morning to you all and thank you for joining the Running Industry Association and Vorys during this webinar. We thank Whitney and his team for working closely with the Running Industry Association to provide the service to our members. And while we welcome our members, we also welcome those who are not currently members. And, well, if you're not familiar with the Running Industry Association, our mission is to support, to advocate for, and to create connections between the retailers and the brands in the specialty running channel and companies like Vorys that provide services to the channel. If there's any interest in learning more about the Running Industry Association, you're welcome to contact me at Terry, T-E-R-R-Y, at runningindustry.org. And again, we thank you for your participation today. We appreciate Vorys and the services they're providing. And with that, I will turn this presentation over to Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, and thanks for having us here today. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to attend this. It's our goal and our intention to try to provide you with information and knowledge that we have gained in working with brands on unauthorized sales and MAP enforcement and price erosion and various issues online. And so put together a presentation to really try to give you some of the valuable insights that we've learned over the last few years in our practice in doing this. For those of you who don't know, just a little background on Vorys. We are an AmLaw Top 200 law firm, which is one of the largest 200 law firms in the United States. Been around for over 100 years, since 1909, have about 375 attorneys and 7 offices around the country. For this group, I think what makes us unique is that we have an entire group at our firm that is dedicated to helping businesses deal with price erosion, MAP issues, gray market, product diversion online. And we saw that a number of our clients, more and more, started coming to us several years ago as the marketplaces were growing and e-commerce was taking off with issues surrounded seeing their prices erode and seeing unauthorized sellers really causing problems with their authorized sellers, seeing it, their wholesalers and their distributors wanting to negotiate lower prices with the manufacturers, and a whole host of issues surrounding that, really looking for help and guidance, and really dug into it and ended up forming a team and strategy, different strategies that specifically targeted at this problem and these issues. And you know, it's unique in that it requires people who understand antitrust law, understand distribution agreements, dealer laws, consumer protection laws, people that understand how to enforce IP rights and the nuances of trademark issues and what constitutes material difference and when does the First Sale Doctrine apply. It also really requires the ability to have an enforcement mindset, integrating technology and investigation and legal tactics all together in an efficient way that works with people's budgets. And so there's a lot of just different things that go into that, and you know, we put a lot of that together to really aim to try to be the true thought leader, and I think really have become a thought leader in this area. We speak at many conferences. Many large technology companies refer a lot of people to us, and we've come up with just unique approaches that did not exist. And so we have a team here. People, most of these folks focus their entire practices on online seller enforcement issues and dealing with all different variations of that. Some of the partners and attorneys here and associates focus just on a particular industry. Others are focused on particular issues, whether it be having the being an antitrust expert, or being an enforcement expert, or kind of experts in authorized reseller policies and all that. So we combine a lot of that knowledge to be able to address these issues. So, this issue has become we've seen over the last few years a bigger and bigger problem. I think a lot of people on the phone are probably, I don't need to belabor that too much. I do think it's helpful to understand just a little bit, why it's become such a big problem. And I really firmly believe that with the just dramatic growth in the marketplaces, there's stats right now that show that surveys that roughly 90% of people said that are shopping online will go to Amazon to compare prices. And if you look, there was a survey that came out that said that last year 40% of people started their search for products on Amazon, and it was around 30% started on the search engines. And just this year, it went up to 50% started on Amazon and 20% on the search engines. And those are people that are starting their search, and then obviously here all the people that turn around and compare the prices. This is another graph, I think, on this point that just shows the marketplaces, the percentage. We all know the stats are regarding e-commerce, but just showing the percentage of e-commerce that's made up by the marketplaces, and it's just growing and growing each year. In 2015, it's 31. It's even dramatically increased in 2016. And is showing even further increase in 17. And that marketplace, I think, was a real disruptor because it lowered the barrier so much to entry for what I call the unauthorized sellers. Anybody that can get a hold of someone's products now doesn't have to create a website. They don't have to worry about driving traffic because they know if they can compete on price that they can either win the buy box or get the sale. And it provides a lot of motivation for people to be able to try to figure out a way to divert products, get products that are being sold, at low amounts or at wholesale, and taking them and turn around selling them on the marketplaces. And so I think this problem is just only going to get bigger and bigger as we see these marketplaces growing and growing. We find in going after these folks, there's all different types of unauthorized sellers. There's distributors that sell for companies that they'll knowingly just sell to people that are dumping products on the internet. There's professionals that just go around and will approach your different dealers and ask to buy products from them, maybe slightly above what they're paying, and just set up an arbitrage system. You have just people that may buy one-offs, or I call them the one-off sellers, 5 or 6 products and sell them. And there's just all different kind of ways people are trying to suck them out. And what we hear over and over is because this is so visible. It used to be diversion, unauthorized sales, but it was on the street. You'd kind of question, well, how much is it really damaging? Well, now the problem is it's that price erosion that I just hear over and over, where we were able to sell to our authorized retailers at X. And now with all these unauthorized sellers online, it's now dropped to Y. Our margins have dropped. And, on the flip side, I've heard people that are able to address the unauthorized sellers be able to show massive ROI, where they're able to demonstrate that by addressing and getting rid of the unauthorized sellers, then they're able to turn around and increase the margins at which they were able to sell their authorized and really, really improve the profits. So, there's that, and just the general channel conflict and the complaining that the brands get from this, I think, are kind of the primary reasons that lead brands to really look in at tackling this. So I know we did a while back a presentation for this association where went through some of the key foundational elements to be able to tackle unauthorized sellers. So here today, I don't plan on going over all that again. I'm going to just provide a high-level summary here, and then I'm going to kind of just go through 10 tips that I pulled out just in working with clients that I wanted to share, just something I thought that you may not have thought of, or something new if you were on the past webinar. So if you haven't heard kind of our general building the foundation and the enforcement workflow, you could look at the webinar we did previously for the association. This one is meant to be a little more detailed. But just at a high level, when you look at going after the unauthorized sellers, the websites typically are not going to remove them for you, and they're not going to get into the area of whether it's illegal or not. And so, you can generally be boiled down into 3 steps, and that is, first of all, creating the proper foundation to be able to enforce against the unauthorized sellers. And the unauthorized sellers are generally going to think what they're doing is legal, and that, hey, I bought your products, I managed to get a hold of them, I'm protected under the First Sale Doctrine. And there are ways that by which a company operates and what it implements in its policies and procedures can have a big impact on whether those unauthorized sales are legal or illegal. And it really comes down to that there's case law where that the courts have held that an unauthorized seller selling a product without services or benefits that are being provided in the authorized channel, or without quality controls that are being administered in the authorized channel, you considered a trademark violation. And so from that, the process that we work with companies on is taking all the different options of services and benefits or quality controls and looking at which ones can potentially work with the business and set the company up so that it can be in a position to be offering things that we know the unauthorized sellers, as a practical matter, cannot deliver, and essentially what we call it legalize those third-party sales. And there's business reasons and even a reason for the consumers why I think all that makes sense. But it's creating that foundation. And then 2 is, I think a lot of companies just haven't really thought through their strategy on how they are going to sell on the marketplaces. Are they going to allow all their folks to sell? Or are they going to limit it to a few? Or are they going to use a third-party seller? Are they going to try to sell themselves? And I think you really need to look at that strategy and how it impacts your ability to enforce and control. And I could do a whole other presentation on that, but just how you sell and your policies as far as allowing others to sell can have a big impact on whether it's actually feasible to control that. Because I see just certain distribution methods, it's like the company, I just know they're going to play whack-a-mole forever, versus others where they can really get under control quickly. And so that's really important. Getting the policies in place. We talked about authorized reseller policies, online sales policies, where if you're selling to a distributor and your distributor is turning around selling to any resellers, if you're not getting authorized reseller policy, there's some sort of authorized reseller program, then it becomes basically impossible when you look out across the internet to know who's an authorized versus unauthorized. And without being able to determine that, it's very difficult to do any sort of MAP or unauthorized sales enforcement. And I was talking with somebody who works a lot in the unauthorized sales kind of technology enforcement industry, and he is saying how interesting it is that a lot of manufacturers had business models where they said, we're really just good at the manufacturing, but let's let the distributor manage all the relationships with the retailers and resellers. They're very good at that, and we'll focus on just making products, and they'll focus on managing the relationship. Well, now with all these resellers that are selling online, and then that causing the distributor to come to the manufacturer and ask for lower prices and eroding the margins, the manufacturer is having to step in and take more control over those relationships with the resellers. And there's ways to do that without, that we're seeing a lot of businesses go to, where it's not causing too much disruption in the business, but it's requiring the manufacturer to, if it wants to protect its margins, to implement some policies that give it some ability to exercise control over those sellers downline, and over the distributors if it wants to be able to solve this problem. And so I think that's an important thing to look at depending on how you distribute your products. And then And then the third that we've covered, and you can look at other webinars I've done and covered this in detail, talking about a graduated enforcement system and figuring out the most efficient way to basically monitor, identify, and remove the unauthorized sellers, and then basically take those results and turn it into publish them so that you can stop new sellers from coming on, and just doing that as efficiently as you possibly can. And this is a problem where a lot of technology companies were built just to go and remove trademarked images or copyrighted images, and you can do that. They can do that by requesting the websites remove them. But when you're dealing with unauthorized, because the websites were removed, you really have to integrate the technology, investigation, and legal into kind of a machine-like enforcement system that does that as efficiently as possible. And that's, you take that legal foundation you create in step one, the policies that allow you to determine who's authorized versus unauthorized, and then you kind of exercise and operate that graduate enforcement system. So at a high level, that is what I think that in most instances companies need to do. I mean, it does vary depending on how many sellers you have and that sort of stuff. And one of the things that we have really stressed with clients coming in is just instead of just running off and just setting up some technology and thinking it's going to be the panacea for everything, really taking a step back and say, let's look at the strategy. Let's make sure you have your legal claims in place. Let's make sure that your sales and policy strategy is right. Now let's figure out what's the best technology, investigation, and enforcement approach that we can put together. And I think having that, doing that, all that strategizing and planning up front is very important. So these 10 tips. So I'm going to go through these and just in no particular order, but just to kind of share with you some things that as we go through these processes that I just described that hopefully are helpful. So first one, what I think a lot of companies aren't doing today is that they don't really know enough to even know if they have legal claims against unauthorized sellers. And I think there's for a lot of companies, when we dive in and see how they're operating, or the quality controls they already have in place, or their current policies, they already have pretty strong legal claims against these unauthorized sellers that they could be incorporating in their C&D letters, that they could be using and to really deter unauthorized sellers. And when the unauthorized seller just comes back and says, "Hey, I'm protected by the First Sale Doctrine," or they get a very boilerplate generic C&D letter, they think that they don't really even think they have any liability. And I think that when you dive into it, I think a lot of companies are surprised. And so as I've talked about in prior presentations, the idea that if you have quality controls or services of benefits in your authorized chain that the unauthorized sellers do not, you often can have a trademark infringement claim. So here's some questions to ask yourself as a company to see whether you already have legal claims. Do you provide any guarantees? Do you provide any return policies? Do you provide any warranties that as a practical matter only apply to people that buy from your authorized channels? Or you were asking people to provide proof of purchase, or asking them to provide, where they got it from. And so if someone just came in and said, "Hey, I bought this from Amazon, I don't know who it is," and they would not get access to a guarantee, that alone could set you up for a legal claim against the unauthorized seller. Do you have any process in your company where you're vetting current retailers or distributors to ensure their trustworthiness? Are you looking at applications? Are you looking at whether they've been sued? That itself is a quality control process. So you can say that the unauthorized seller, when an unauthorized seller is getting it, they're interfering with your quality control process and their inability to do that. Do you have a recall policy? And do we have a good faith argument that, look, if an unauthorized seller is out there selling, that would interfere with your ability to effectuate the recall? And again, it doesn't actually have to happen. It's just whether it's the test is likelihood of confusion under the Lanham Act. And there's courts that have held that, look, if an unauthorized seller out there selling, it interferes with the company's ability to exercise a recall, then that is enough to support a trademark violation. And so, maybe maybe you already have a recall policy in place, and you can make that argument. Do you, as a policy within the company, do you ask your authorized retailers to report customer complaints about the products? If you do, then that is something that courts have held to be a quality control process that a company exercises down through its authorized chain that does not exist or apply when the unauthorized third-party seller is selling, and therefore that supports a trademark claim against the unauthorized sellers. Do you have any specialized training that you apply for the authorized sellers? Any information that you give them about your products that help them be able to describe, sell it, answer questions? Any materials, and that can support a difference. Do any of your products require trained people to give consultation? Do you have any products where you have people that want to give them information maybe about what kind of running you're going to do with them, or what shoe size, or what the width of your foot, or is there something inherent there? Do you have any transportation or handling or storage instructions you provide to your authorized sellers? That's been deemed to be a quality control process that courts have held can support a claim. And a lot of people think that material difference has to be a big difference or a physical difference, and the courts have repeatedly said it doesn't have to be a physical difference. And in fact, and then they've also said that the subtle differences are ones that most easily and most likely confuse consumers. And there's language where courts have repeatedly said the threshold is very, very low. And another interesting thing is just that if the quality of product itself doesn't have to vary, it's just that under the trademark law that a manufacturer has a right to be able to control the quality and exercise its quality controls down through the distribution chain. And when someone buys a product, they think that it's undergone the manufacturer's quality control procedures, and if it hasn't, and all the way down through, then that is something that can support a likelihood of confusion claim. Reward programs. Do you offer reward programs or loyalty discounts or promotional tools, or ask your authorized sellers to? That is something that's been deemed to support a legal claim. Do you have any conditions, that you apply only to products that are sold in the e-commerce channels? So some companies will, recognizing that maybe somebody is not going to be able to try on the shoes when they buy them in e-commerce, so you offer some sort of warranty, or you offer some sort of return policy that you only apply for e-commerce, and then you can turn around and say that these other unauthorized sellers don't offer that. So there's many different things there, but I think that I wanted to just provide you some questions that you could ask yourself as a company, and I think the answers to those can help you develop your own claims against the unauthorized sellers. Tip 2 is kind of related to that, and that is that you want to look at those services or benefits or quality controls that is practically the unauthorized seller cannot deliver. Because those are the ones that, let's say, the unauthorized sellers, they want to try to go out there and sell your products, and then they want understanding that if they don't offer the warranties or something that you offer, that they want to try and mimic that. But one of the good ones that is basically impossible for most unauthorized sellers to offer is some sort of repair service. I think I talked about on the last time was for this association was shoe companies that I've had where they've offered a repair service, maybe the discounted repair, or if I had bought the products and I had to show my proof of purchase and where I got it from. And that's something that an unauthorized seller, just as a practical matter, it'd be very difficult for them to offer. Another thing may be like a subscription to a blog or a newsletter that the company offers on running, or offers related to shoes or anything related to your business. If you offer that to people who buy and they receive information on that from your authorized sellers, then that is something that you could distinguish from people buying from the unauthorized. I think the loyalty program is a good one. Being able to provide those promotions and special coupons, that's something the unauthorized seller can't offer. And then, I think that you could even have something where when someone's buying from an authorized seller, that they have access where they can enter information regarding maybe that helps them pick like the right shoes. So it could be what's the purpose of the shoe, what's the average, how much are you going to run in it, what are some of the detailed metrics, and then maybe that spits back the kind of a recommendation on the type of shoes that you have. And if you give those types of services or benefits, I think that's something that unauthorized seller just cannot replicate. So I think that's important. Again, supporting your legal claims against these unauthorized sellers. Another thing that I think can really help is set up internal processes where you are collecting evidence to support these claims. So you have these quality controls you put in place. You've got some of the services or benefits that you offer, and under the law, the first step is being able to show those differences, and then the second step is being able to present that as that you have a case of the consumers would likely be confused. And a lot of the courts will hold that it's presumed they're going to be confused if you can show these differences, but even to further kind of support that presumption, you can set up internal policies where you're collecting evidence to support it. So maybe you ask your customer service department, if anybody, or people in your warranty or repair department, if anybody calls in and asks for a return or repair and they bought the products from a seller on Amazon or eBay or some other Walmart.com, and it's from an unknown seller, and we don't honor the repair for those, but they thought they were going to be able to get access to that. That would be really good evidence to collect to be able to support your consumer confusion claims. When collecting evidence when people call in and say that they received damaged products buying from these unauthorized channels, and recording that, because that can show how not being able to implement your quality control procedures leads to these damaged goods being disseminated through those channels. And so that can help you. Having complaints, when people make complaints about damaged products, seeing that. I mean, a lot of times we'll even see that posted online. We'll record that information where people are going out and they're making complaints. Hey, I bought this product from this seller on eBay and it's all damaged, and so we'll collect that stuff. And even people that, if someone called in and say, oh yeah, I bought it, I think it was unauthorized, and you look it up and they're not an authorized seller. So I think setting up some internal processes there, you're essentially preserving evidence that you could use in most any in your enforcement efforts against these unauthorized sellers. That I think could be really helpful. All right, so moving on tip number 4, I think one of the things that I'm seeing over and over is companies that just allow a lot of their authorized sellers to sell on the marketplaces really struggle to be able to stop price erosion. And one of the analogies that I make is there is an economic study I read that talked about Honda dealerships, and by moving them 30 miles apart further from each other, they were able to raise their prices about $500 each time, and they were saying that customers could not go and compare prices. And the problem is when people allow a lot of their authorized sellers to sell in these marketplaces, it's pretty much like you setting the manufacturer setting up a lot of Honda dealerships in the exact same street. So the customer could just walk up and down the street looking for the prices, right? And then there's a lot of economic studies that just show how, as a matter of course, people are going to presume that others are going to lower their prices, even if they know they've got pricing policies that apply to them, but they're going to presume that others are going to lower their prices, so then they're going to lower, and then it causes kind of that race to the bottom. And outside the studies, I can just tell you, and working with the companies, the ones that seem to really be able to do the best are the ones that limit the amount of people that they authorize to sell in the marketplaces to a very few amounts, or they even give exclusives to companies to be able to resell their products online, and then they set up policies where they they tell their other authorized sellers, look, you can sell on your own websites, but we don't want you selling on the marketplaces. And I mean, what I see is, I mean, if you think about it, you got a bunch of people, authorized sellers on there trying to win the buy box on a marketplace. It's just very difficult to get them to stop. And you can spend a lot of your time and money just playing whack-a-mole, chasing those folks around. It's also difficult to even decipher who's your authorized versus your unauthorized in those circumstances. So, and the other thing that I'm seeing is the companies where if you select like one reseller to sell on a marketplace, it's easy to control your pricing policy with them because you could just unilaterally stop selling them easily. But you also then have somebody, if they're an exclusive selling for you, they are motivated or incentivized to really invest a lot in the marketing and driving traffic to your brand, because they are trying to really grow your brand on one of the sites, and they know that as a policy, you're not just having all these other sellers that are selling on the marketplaces. And when you just have a bunch of people on there, a lot of times you don't have one or two people then that really have the motivation or resources to really try to win your search, to really help you improve search and drive traffic to your brand. So, for what it's worth, I mean, that's kind of just my observation on when somebody's trying to decide whether they're going to allow a lot of people to sell or just a few. One of the things that I think companies really need to think about is, once you've set up those legal claims and you've got your strategy and your reseller policies in place, you want to look at creating what I call an automated process to try to be able to remove the vast majority of your unauthorized sellers. And I think you've seen the last presentation, or you can watch the presentation before, where there was a funnel where we talked about one of the processes that we've used where you monitor, you find the unauthorized sellers, you rank them from highest volume to lowest volume, then we send electronic C&D letters to all of them. Then anybody doesn't come down, we investigate, find their identity. Then we send physical C&D letters saying, look, we know who you are and where you are. Then we'll send them draft complaints, and we'll repeat that process on a monthly basis. And, the challenge here is you need some lawyer involved in that, but you also want to do it within budget, and you want to have basically an automated process, and that you're not paying on a billable hourly basis to be able to do that. And so, we've really worked hard and worked with technology companies and vendors to try to set up those processes where companies can, once you have the document set up, I mean, it should not cost very much to be able to just kind of go through those steps. And we found that if you go through those steps, that, as much as 80 to 90% you can get removed. If you have to go, even just sending them a draft complaint, at the end, if someone sees their name in a federal court lawsuit, you can have a template one that you can use, rinse and repeat. We find that that people will take that very seriously, and the vast majority will remove and stop at that point. And I think the process that you got to go through, I've said this before, is these sellers, they often think what they're doing is legal, and they're protected by the First Sale Doctrine. They think you're not going to identify them, and they think you're not going to do anything about it. And if your enforcement process doesn't hit each of those 3 pain points, it's not going to work. You have to be able to set yourself up so that you can really show them why what they're doing is illegal, and by kind of implementing the quality controls and services and benefits. And if they don't come down, you got to be able to identify them. And then you have to be able to go to the next step and show them you're serious and you're going to do something about it, and that's where a draft complaint comes in. And so, doing all that under a flat fee and doing all that, even having non-lawyers involved in that really can send, we have folks that will send the C&D letters and send the draft complaints in an efficient way. And yeah, there's going to be 5-10% that you may have to do some more escalated legal, but I think the vast majority of them can be addressed kind of in an automated process to really be able to go after those folks. So this step is based upon kind of my current assessment of brand gating and all the stuff we're hearing and seeing and working with brands on the marketplaces. And it's always it's never certain where Alibaba's, Amazon, Taobei's, where they're going to come out on a brand gating request. But if I had to predict where they may come out and what I'm hearing and seeing and experiencing, that ultimately, on a company like a Taobao or Alibaba, if their concern is their concern at the end of the day is consumer perception, and they don't want consumers to feel like they're going to be hoodwinked when they buy products on these sites, and they don't want them to feel like they don't trust it. Okay, I think with what I read, a lot of these they want to be a place where people can get the best prices, and they make a lot of money off third-party sellers, but they're trying to balance that against the idea that they don't want people getting fakes on there. And so, what I've heard and seen, for example, is if somebody can go in and let's say we're doing this unauthorized sale enforcement process, well, we're looking for counterfeits as we go through that. And we get a counterfeit making a request to like an Alibaba and saying, hey, can you remove this? And then they'll remove it, and then you find another counterfeit and you make a request. And you'll feel like you're playing whack-a-mole a little bit by asking that those counterfeits be removed. However, over time, you're building your case, that you're showing that, look, our brand is being counterfeited. We've taken action to be able to do that, and therefore we'd like to get gated. And I think incorporating that in an unauthorized sales enforcement process, given the current state of affairs, I think is smart for a business, because that's what I think is going to give a brand the best chance of getting that kind of ultimate thing, which a lot of brands would love, which is the brand gating, where one of these marketplaces says that if somebody wants to sell your products on there, a third party, they'd have to have your permission or be able to demonstrate that you've given permission or have invoices from you. And I think that I think it's just smart for brands. Again, these things are fluid. You can always predict where they're going to come out on this, but I think that for me, if I had a brand, I wouldn't be looking to want to play whack-a-mole removal of counterfeit on like an Alibaba for years, but I would do it building the case for gating and then demonstrate to them, look, we've taken action. Here's the counterfeits we found, and now we'd request gated, and I'd go back again and again, and I think that would give the best chance of ultimately being in a situation where the people can only sell on there with your permission. Tip number 7 is implementing internal policies to help you identify diverters and unauthorized sellers. We do see a lot of companies that will say, oh, I got some technology and I want to send some C&D letters, and all that is good, but I do think there's some internal things that companies can do to help them be able to ferret out which of its authorized sellers are actually diverting and the identities of the third-party unauthorized sellers. One thing we'll do often in agreements with the authorized sellers is put in rights to audit. So we'll say, look, we have a right to audit where your sales went. We want you to keep, records of your sales, and let them know that we may come in and do an audit. And I think that often can deter them from diverting products to unauthorized sellers, creating a toll-free number and a website where people can report diverters or the identity of unauthorized sellers. A lot of times, especially certain unauthorized sellers, they'll know who the other unauthorized sellers are, and so they may not want the competition, and so they'll call in and report the names and give you valuable information. So almost setting up a process where you can accept some informants and get information that way. I think having an employee that reviews purchases that people make and that your authorized sellers are making, and then at the same time is getting data related to the unauthorized sales that are occurring online and comparing those two, and then using that to determine, trying to match that up. And a lot of times you can look at the stuff that's being sold online and the quantities, and then look at what's being ordered, and you can determine kind of who's supplying the unauthorized seller. The sales employees they're going to be motivated a lot of times in most systems by trying to get their commissions, and they're not going to really take a scrutinizing look at the people that they're selling to see whether they're turning around dumping online. So I think it's good to have a sort of independent employee within the organization that takes a look at that. Requiring your authorized sellers, asking them to account for or provide records of their sales, I think can help, especially if you see large orders. And a lot of times companies will get suspicious of certain orders in certain parts of the country and think that this seems to be more than they actually could be selling through legitimate channels. And sometimes those companies, if they haven't spent the money to go through a serialization that allows them to track all product orders, what they can do is you can get some invisible marking ink that you can mark on it and sell it to the suspicious orderer, and then turn around and buy some products online. And that process often has really helped in just quickly and efficiently being able to kind of figure out who's supplying the unauthorized sales that are occurring online. Do not sell lists sometimes are good for companies to create, where as you identify people that are diverting or engaging in unauthorized sales, being able to create those lists and sending them out to your authorized sellers and your authorized distributors and saying, look, here's people we've identified. And that really helps them kind of just be able to understand when they get approached by someone like that the manufacturer knows who they are and that they shouldn't sell them. And we've even sometimes for certain industries, just based on the unauthorized sellers that we see cross-pollinating across many different brands, been able to take those unauthorized sellers and create kind of a do not sell list for a variety of companies that are selling in the same space. So I think those are some of the things that we're seeing done internally to be able to kind of further support the identification and enforcement. Tip number 8 is using the internet to help uncover the identities of unauthorized sellers. And what I thought I would do is just go through in a little bit of detail some of what we have an ID team here at Vorys that consists of people that have conducted investigation for brand protection companies, as well as some attorneys that have focused just on identifying anonymous people online. And so I know a lot of internal companies have people that work on doing that and trying to figure out who the unauthorized sellers are on there. So we could do a whole presentation on different tactics and techniques and things you can do at a high level, and trying to how you can do it efficiently. But what I want to do is just kind of go through some of the different tools that may give the companies on here kind of a trigger or some ideas of things you can do. So what we do often is we have databases of unauthorized sellers that we've built up over time and IDing them, and so we'll often start looking there. We often do product purchases, and a lot of times in doing product purchases can grab information from whether through a PayPal account or information on the packages. You can get through a PayPal account. You can also get usernames, email addresses, phone numbers. You can get return information on the packages, and you can take that information and we can often put that in our database and see whether it matches up with any past sellers. You can run all those bits of information. I mean, they may make up their username. They may have a made-up email address, but they may, have a phone number that you can run through just different searches on the internet. So you can run all that stuff through different searches and see if it shows up on any social media sites, on any other websites, and that often can help you lead to the identity of who that person is online. You can, Amazon has logos. A lot of people that will sell online on Amazon will use logos for their website. And you can take that logo and you can put it into Google and do a reverse look and see any other sites that have ever used that logo before. And you can go and then look, and often that'll show you another website that's used that logo, and then there's identifying information on there that can help you identify those sellers. We have folks that kind of specialize in doing background checks. There's different software tools that we use that are good to really help. LexisNexis has a comprehensive Find a Person business tool where you get one snippet of information, a phone, an address. You can look up and you can see all affiliated businesses. You can see the history. You can see vehicles, and that often can help lead to the identities of either the person selling or the people that are involved. Another thing that our team will use is a website called marketplacepulse.com. And that can be beneficial because it'll have on there the previous screen names that the sellers have used when they're selling. A lot of times when people first start selling, they're not as concerned about protecting their anonymity, and then maybe once they receive some D letters, they'll start using different names. So you can look at the previous names that seller was using online. You can also look and see if that seller has sold in any foreign countries, and in certain other countries, the privacy laws are not as strict, and in fact, a lot of times there's requirements that people have to make their identity available when they're selling in other countries. So you can look up and see when those people are selling on a different website in a different country. You can then look and see their information and find it there. When people are using their own domains, you can often go and do who-is searches and identify what information they use to register for those domains. You can look at the history of any domains that have been previously affiliated with that domain and that person. And a lot of times, if you can find the ties, you can find that the person on their current domain they may have used all fake information to register for it, but when you can go and look at the history and you can maybe see who owned the domain earlier, or there's different tools that we can use to be able to see what all domains people have used before, or look at what we call global domain variations, where have they registered that domain in foreign countries, or have they done different versions of the domain with .net, .org, .biz. And if you look at those and then go look at the registrar, you usually can find places where they've slipped up, and there's a snippet of information that you can even then take back to some of those tools like LexisNexis or other things, where you can go and search it. You can look at state business filings, registrations, where you can search those, and there's certain states you can enter in information related to a business, and it'll give you information about the business and who's affiliated with it. Just by looking at consumer complaint forums, often about that business, or has anybody been complaining about that eBay or Amazon seller, or any sort of negative reviews. A lot of times in there you'll see information where people will mention the identity of the seller. There's seller names histories on eBay that you can look at, and they'll have prior names that the person used. You can have seller feedback. A lot of times, if people if you want to provide feedback or ask for customer service information when you're purchasing, a lot of times you get information right then that can help you ID them. There's obviously a whole list of checklists that the internal team goes through, and but I thought it would just be helpful, as folks. I'm happy to, kind of, if someone internally is looking to try to, do some investigation, give some further tips on this. Just a few kind of finishing up here. We've got seller names and variations in names against the domain names. On a lot of times you can take the information you get and you can run it through your authorized distributor search tool. So if you have a list of your own distributors, if you get information related to identity of somebody, you can take that back and then run it through your own distributors, and that helps you lead to the person that is behind it. If they're using certain language in a weird way on describing products, you can take those phrases and then enter them into Google or other things, and then look, and you'll find maybe other websites out there or pages on social media accounts that show up that have that same language in there, and you can almost be kind of a quasi-linguistic expert here, and use that to kind of link some folks, and then that can lead to clues that you can tie folks together. So there's multiple things you can do that. One of the things that we also like to do is when you identify the unauthorized seller behind that, you can use, there's a site, familytreenow.com, that can give you relatives and address history. What you can do there is a lot of times we'll be able to use that to be able to, we'll take those names and then run them through our authorized retailer or seller database, and then you can find out a lot of times that a family member is the one that's supplying the products. There's a Wayback Machine where you can go and you can look at prior versions of websites. So again, a lot of times people will, when they start a website or they first register a domain, they'll use their authentic information, and then only as they get more into it and they get more nervous about their identity being revealed, then they'll start to change their websites and change their information. And so by using that machine, we can go back and we can see kind of, we can find the identifying information on older sites. So these are a number of different sites and tools that we use. Now I've said before that sometimes, even if you go through all that, you need additional information. And I think, that's where having a comprehensive ID team, what we'll do is we'll serve a subpoena, and once we've set up the legal claims right, we can serve subpoenas to be able to get the identity of the unauthorized sellers through that if absolutely necessary. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, but only two more to go. I've talked about some escalated, that last 10% that you need to get down, and there are times where people can be very stubborn, and sometimes we'll have to file a claim to bust up a scheme. We have found the vast majority of unauthorized sellers, they make their living selling lots of brands, so it's not worth it for them to fight on a particular brand. But when you do file, I think a lot of these people can be pretty slippery, and you want to lock them down, you want to shut them down. And when you do that, get an agreement that has a strict liquidated damages provision in there. So if you ever catch them again, you have the ability to enforce that. You also want to make sure that they've given you the source of their leak, where they're getting the information from. We have a motion to compel that we've had granted in federal court. We'll show them that the courts have ordered that. There's case law that supports that in other states. where even the defendants have tried to argue it's trade secrets where they're getting the products from. The court has said no and ordered that be turned over. So we'll show them those decisions and demand with those that they provide us the source of the information. So you want to get the source. You want to be able to get the liquidated damage provision there and get an agreement. I think you also want to, certain times you want to publicize your efforts. And I have these pictures here because one of the analogies that we've used is turning your situation from a river into a contained pond. And the reason for that is, if you go out and you do this enforcement, you don't let the kind of the unauthorized sales world know about it, your authorized sellers know about it, then what you'll see is just a consistent influx of new sellers. I mean, the marketplace market is just getting bigger and bigger, and new sellers are getting on there. And I think what you'll have to just continue to deal with kind of a constant new inflow of stream of new unauthorized sellers. But if you take some action, with a number of clients who filed a claim, issued a press release on PR Newswire, sent out communications to authorized folks about the results, spoken at distributor conferences, authorized retailer conferences, created videos before, done a host of communications about the efforts of the company that have really slowed down the influx and of new sellers. And I think that can really save money in enforcement and ultimately be a big factor in helping companies clean up the problem. So finally, tip number 10 is, and I think this is just something I'm seeing, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of this, is companies enlisting the assistance of resellers to assist in channel management. What I mean by, there's companies out there that specialize and focus in selling brands' products on the marketplaces, and they've got teams of experts that drive traffic, improve search results, and really help grow brands on the marketplaces. And I'm seeing more and more of those companies even offer, cover, whether it be cover our legal fees or, do some of the enforcement on their own, but really develop strategies that do the sales and channel cleanup at the same time. And, we've been working with some of those companies and really seen that be effective, because for a lot of brands, the manufacturers, to clean up, it's hard sometimes for them to really put a finger on exactly what their ROI is or get a real significant budget to be able to go out and tackle it. But some of these authorized resellers, they drive traffic, they improve and grow the brand, and then they take over that channel cleanup. And I think it really, and just seeing it just at the end of the day work and kind of satisfy both the sales and channel cleanup at the same time. So wanted to just kind of throw that in there. As the last one, we've got just a few minutes. I know we just got a couple minutes left. And I don't know, Michelle, if there's any questions at this point. If anybody can obviously email me or feel free to call if there's any particular issues or questions you'd like to go through here.
Yeah, we do have a few questions. The first one is, in China, if a Chinese firm prevails in getting your trademark first, then their product owner wouldn't be counterfeit if they own the trademark, but can you fight by saying it's not the official U.S.-made product?
Can you read that one more time?
Yeah. In China, if a Chinese firm prevails in getting your trademark first, then their product wouldn't be counterfeit if they own their trademark, but can you fight it by saying it's not official U.S.-made product?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with that, on that particular issue of fighting a counterfeit, it's a first to file rule. There's a number of different strategies you can use there to go ahead and say it's a bad faith claim and get it transferred back over to you. And that's a situation where we actually have attorneys that focus all their practice on dealing with the trademark issues in China. And so I would probably loop one of them in to be able to kind of get the most efficient way to get that situation handled. That is a common problem that comes up and that our trademark attorneys in that area deal with.
For tip number 10, if they are selling our product and we ask them to help with management, is that collusion?
No, I mean, I don't think when you're dealing with a vertical, our antitrust expert can talk about this in detail, but when you're dealing, antitrust law is primarily designed when you're dealing with horizontal price restraints, so going from one competitor to the next. But you're allowed to have price restraints when you're dealing with a vertical, someone in your vertical chain. So someone who's reselling your products is it's why you're allowed to have pricing policies and that sort of stuff with them. And so I think they have an interest in helping enforce that policy, those policies, just the same way you do. And I think it really doesn't kind of fall into the same problems that you do when you're dealing with a horizontal price restraint at this time.
Thanks, Whitney. Those are all the questions we have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any further questions or anything, let me know, and we will go from there. But I really appreciate everybody attending.